Okay, please ignore those boxes right there. I was been supposed to take those boxes out when I moved here, but I haven't done it yet. So mind your business. Mind your business. But yeah, so I wanted to come on here and talk about how the word is on your mind, and that's that. I think that a lot of times, and I'm going to speak on me being a black person and a black person experience, so that's what I'm going to speak on. No division, but I'm black, and so I'm going to speak from being black. But so many times that I have been developing everything, and I have been like watching and learning and doing a lot of things, I have realized that the war has always been on our mind, and to keep us pretty much like separated from our own divinity, our own spirituality, our own togetherness and unity. And as I go through the years of just looking at like why we were kind of more, together at one point, and now we're like not together at this point. And I think it was just because back then it was like society was telling us that like we were inferior. Why couldn't I just say that word? What? We were inferior. We were not seen as equal to our counterparts, right? We were not seen equal to white people. And even though, other races were still like, they didn't like them either. It was something about black people that they just was like, yeah, well, we don't like them either, but we really, really, really don't like you. And I have like studied so much over the years, and I just realized that like, yeah, the war was always on our mind. Just think about this right here. If we grew up thinking and learning, and if it was the thing was like, yeah, the most abundant, richest place where technology has started in astrology was the most like profound, and it was these beautiful rich land, and it was in Africa. What would we have thought growing up, right? Me hearing that, you know that place that exists in what we call Egypt, and ancient time it was called Kemet. What if we would have heard that like, oh yeah, that most beautiful place is in Africa, instead of hearing like that most beautiful place is Egypt? Because growing up and just hearing that Egypt, I wasn't hearing that like Egypt was in Africa. So like growing up, I didn't even associate Egypt as in Africa. I associated Africa, of course, like they're showing me the commercials. They're showing me that these poor black kids in Africa who can't get food, and who are, oh my gosh, who are like living this life of just pain and suffering and poverty and things like that. They just can't afford to live, and they just need the people help because their bellies are protruding and they just are suffering, and their flies are, why are the flies flying on them? Why are you literally walking with them to go get the water? Go, put them in a car, put them on the van, and go and get the water. Like, why are you doing that? But I realized that did happen because I know that when my brother he was in elementary school. Well, he was in like junior high or whatever, and he was in this program, and he was going to China, and they like the news like came to our house and was like showing us like, this dude, like this little boy from this place, he's from poverty and he's from the inner city, and he has to do all this traveling to go. And they literally watched him get on the bus. It took like 2 hours for him to get to school, and they literally watched him get on the bus, and they like met him back at the school to film him, and he just like, y'all not gonna drop me off, like. And that's the thing, like, there is always like this thing to like show us our pain. And I know I may be flopping, I'm gonna get back, but it's always the thing to like kind of like show us that we're struggling, and to show like, look, that one did it. And just think, it's always just like that whole thing of like, but one can do it. Not all though, we don't want all of you, but one can be successful, and one can be the shining pupil, and we can end up, hold on, All right, we back. But no, it was always kind of like that one, right? And she just keep getting up there. Oh my gosh. But yeah, it was always like we're going to pick that one, but if we grew up kind of like learning that like, oh my gosh, we were this big group of people who like had all of the, like, why is she walking right there? And so if like we knew that we were like this big group of people who had, all these luxuries, and we were like, oh my gosh, we were the first to like have all this stuff and to do all this stuff, it kind of would make us really be like, oh my god, I can be an astronaut. Like, it would make us think of ourselves a lot better. But instead we were seeing, people who have our skin color in poverty, they're in Africa, like begging and pleading and only eating rice and walking to the river to get water that is muddy and dirty. And then we are living in that, majority of us, we're living in that. And then we're seeing in our environment, we're seeing violence and pain and suffering, and knowing that the lights are going to be off and our parent can't pay the bills, and some of us like stayed in like single parent households and stuff like that, so we seen our mother struggle. And it was just like, okay, so we are inferior. And even though they weren't saying it, they were saying it. And it was like, they were saying it in so many different words and so many different things that we were like taking in. We were like internalizing that. And because, now we're waking up to the consciousness of understanding like how the world truly works, and how, what you picture here and what you believe here is what you're constantly, manifesting into your life. So it's like they already knew all of these things. And I was watching a few movies that I watched before, like a few shows, and I was like, oh my gosh, this stuff about like manifestation and law of attraction and the power of your mind and stuff like this has always been out there. It was just I was not on that frequency of even understanding or even knowing to look for that. But for some reason I was always gravitating towards that. And then it was just like this influx. I know where I'm from, we created the style of rap called drill. So that became a thing of another thing that they could like capitalize off of. Like, oh my gosh, yes, we can do this. And I saw that this influx came, and this like picture to show Chicago as like this bad place came when, the president came from there. So it was like that's where the president was living. And it was like, oh, let's show how it really is there. And these people, they act like they're, they call themselves Chirac, and they have so many killings. But before, we didn't see Chicago like that. We saw Chicago as like this, place where all the tourists wanted to come, and we had to be in there, and it was all this, fancy wealth downtown. But the people who were, truly in the hood, we knew exactly like what was really going on, and we knew that like it was pain and suffering there, and it was shooting, it was killing. But it was like, okay, well, how can we capitalize off these young people wanting to express? There's another one, like back again with our trauma and capitalizing off our trauma. It was like an outlet of like, this is what's going on. But they stroked the ego, and they made it like, oh my gosh, okay, these little black people, we don't have to do it. We just need to get into their minds. So if they're constantly repeating these things, and music is like mantras. So if we're, you have the chorus and you're steady like repeating these choruses of like, I'm gonna shoot and I'm gonna kill. Like, we gonna keep recording that, and we're gonna keep having that mantra. It gets ingrained in you. And that's the thing. A lot of us are not understanding what it's doing on us on the mental and psychological level. Like, we don't understand that because we aren't on that frequency of being able to process what's happening. So that's why it's easy for, us to get distracted by other things, because we are so in a program that they have kind of like did to us. So it's a lot harder to like get out of that program unless you like fixate on it. And one thing that I saw was like the influx of like our awareness happened when COVID like happened. And that was because we had to sit, and we saw a lot of people who were just like could not focus on that, but they could not do it. And it was just like, because we were so like ingrained on like being distracted. We were so like, okay, we always have to be doing something and we always have to be distracted. And a lot of us could not just like sit and be still. But I saw the growth of, like, they like to call it the new age, but this is exactly what we was doing before. This is before when we were using all of God's things to connect back to God, and then they kind of came over and told us like, actually that's a sin and you're doing it wrong. And it's like, what? How are we doing it wrong if we're honoring that God gave us grass, and we're honoring that God gave us air, and we're not killing each other, due to because I don't like you, and you're doing something different from me. And we were like really this abundant, loving group of people. And then they kind of like told us that like everything that you're doing is wrong. And so over time, we've lost that. And so that's why I see we when we get to this stage, a lot of people like to like quote the Bible and be like, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. And I'm like, it's literally in the Bible. It's literally in the Bible. And the people who are into like the new age stuff, I do think that it does go, some things I'm not interested in, but it's about becoming conscious. And people who are still with their veil on, they can't understand like, this new wave of like consciousness and understanding that like, yeah, you have the power to control your reality. And you have been taught to like water yourself down and to just be minimum and to be in your ego and to focus on the things that they tell you to focus on and nothing else. So you have a lot of people who are just like, unconsciously walking the earth. And unfortunately it's a lot of us Black people who just can't seem to get it, but that's because they have taught us to like ignore the circumstances, like okay, and so it's so hard for us to like get out of the program because we're so like used to being there. We're so used to like being focused on what they tell us to be focused on. So anytime that we detour away from that, our brains literally are like, no, this is wrong, because we still have all of this, like the abuse that we went through as Black people and stuff like that. And so it's just like, it's very hard for us to get out of this mindset that like there actually may be other things, because like I said, we were taught to not value ourselves. We were taught to like see ourselves as less than and to see ourselves as competition. So it's always like there's not enough. And so in order to like there's not enough, I have to compete with my neighbor, who is the person who looks like me, who is my brother, who is my sister. I have to compete with them because there's not enough. And it was just like, that's a war on your mind. And then you go and you take it to food, and it's literally changing the neurotransmitter. So it's literally sending signals to you that like, I want this. And so you think that you want this because it's literally the chemicals telling you that you want this. And then you have social media, and then you have these platforms that are literally like teaching you. There are psychologists behind these things. These are not just, when I talk to people and they're just like, yeah, no, I'm like, no, these are literally people who study the brain, who study, quantum physics and study all these things, who are able to control this stuff. And you don't get it because of the simple fact that you're in the program, and there's no other way to say it. But, the war is definitely on your mind. And in order to beat that, you have to like literally reprogram it. And it's not easy because you have been taught year after year after year to not value yourself. You have been taught that is what you see in the media. That is what you see. You see that like the people who get the most attention are the people who, do all the bad stuff. And you see yourselves as like, oh, okay, we're the robbers, we're the killers, we're the stealers. And then you go throughout life, and then you attract that energy, and you're thinking like, yeah, life is that. But it's like, no, because you went to that because that was the vibration that you were emitting, and that's all you saw. So that's what you created your reality to be. But now you're playing into their role, that you're being their puppet. Exactly what they told you to be, that's exactly what you're ending up being. My alarm came on, so the video stopped. But yeah, so you have to learn how to beat the system and beat the war in your mind by literally taking in information that enhances your mind and know your true divinity. And it's a lot more that I'm gonna get into, but I'm gonna go ahead and cut the video off. I feel like I'm rambling, but I'm gonna go ahead and I'll get into some more in the next video. But yeah, so that is the thing. If you're taught, that you're powerful and that you are abundant, then you are able to go to that. But if you're taught that, life is a struggle and that's all you see is a struggle, then that's what you think. So people aren't just lucky. People have, like, there are people in the world who are like, they grow up and they grow up in money. They grow up with people who are positive and telling them, like, you could be anything that you want to be and you're able to explore yourself, then that allows them to do just that. And then, we like to call them that lucky. That's the no, because they had positive influences and they saw abundance, so they was able to attract that. But if you're around poverty and that's all you see is your people impoverished and you see pain and suffering, you're gonna be like, that's what life is, it's pain and suffering. And then there may be, a couple of the few who are like, you know what, I'm gonna do something and I'm gonna change. But that's that one in every type of person. So yeah, there's more to it, but the word's on your mind, and I'll get more into it and I'll go into like deeper overview. But this is just a touch of it. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye.